Now that you have filled in the first part of your KWL chart, you are ready to begin. We're going to be examining how vocabulary and background knowledge go hand in hand. So just take a moment and considering the topics of vocabulary acquisition and background knowledge and their interrelatedness, can you predict which one of these words will not be part of our lesson today? If you said Germanic, you are correct. So vocabulary, although it is true that the extent to which students learn new content does depend on factors like the skill of the teacher, the interest of the student in the topic, as well as the complexity of the content in relationship to where the student is at developmentally, research does support one very compelling fact. What students already know about the content is the strongest indicator of how well they will learn new information relative to that content. So students must be able to already have some kind of framework from which to build to get the full benefits out of the lesson. Dewey and Piaget reinforced this idea because they believed strongly in a child-centered approach to education, which means if we're going to teach vocabulary, we need to be sure that we are helping our students access or build background knowledge on that topic. So, Dewey and Piaget, again, they are constructivists, and they, as Rebecca Alber put it, propose that new knowledge is constructed from old. Constructivism holds the educational belief that as teachers, it's essential that we make connections between what new items are being presented, as well as with, in accordance with, students' prior experiences. So there's a direct relationship. The more background knowledge you have, the more vocabulary you're going to more easily acquire and understand within context, and the more you're going to achieve. So there's a wake-up call here. Basically, when some studies were done by Durkin in 1979 to examine how much reading instruction versus direct vocabulary instruction was being conducted in classrooms across America, they found that out of 4,469 minutes per year spent on basal reading instruction, that's like your reading group's time, not quite like we do today, but back then it was similar to that, how much time students were being spent being inside of a book. Only 19 of those minutes were spent upon direct vocabulary instruction. Now, looking at the context of the time, the 1970s was really about the socio-cultural movement in education. It's still very prevalent in today's schools. But out of that was birthed the whole language approach to phonics, where we said, well, just immerse students in quality literature and do some guided thinking for them, and they will understand everything. And we know now that it takes a mixture of think-alouds and guided instruction paired with strong amounts of direct instruction in order for students to acquire the types of knowledge in reading and writing that they need. So back in 1979, only 19 minutes a year was spent on direct instruction. A few years later, Rosser and Jewell both confirmed that same. They found 1.67 minutes daily of direct vocabulary instruction among 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. That averages to more than what Durkin found, but still it's an alarmingly small amount of time. We can also see that the amount of annual income is directly related to in most cases, related to the level of education in the student's background. So making our instruction accessible to all of our students really matters. Background knowledge is huge. What types of language are we exposing our students to? The academic language they need to be able to understand how to approach different concepts in their instruction? Or are we also spending time on pragmatics, which are especially helpful for students who lack social skills or who are learning English as a second language? They have to know the basics of proper etiquette and standard English when speaking and writing. Does the student have high fluid or low fluid intelligence? High fluid intelligence is associated with enhanced ability to process and store information. It means a lot of your neurons are working at high speed, you are maximizing every minute of your education, and you're able to process and store information very readily. Low fluid intelligence is associated with a diminished ability to process and store information, so the exact opposite. So for example, some things that we need to be able to do. Maybe we need the practical knowledge, okay? So let's go back here to pragmatics and academics. Maybe we need the pragmatic knowledge of how to navigate a subway every day to get to and from work versus academic understanding of Chernobyl and the impact that that event in history had upon the people in that area. Thinking about, too, students who come from a high socioeconomic background versus a low socioeconomic background. How much frequency do they have to have academic-oriented experiences, like authentic times to go to museums, zoos, libraries? Are they out in their community doing real and interesting things, or are they confined to just hearing about life? Are they a native English speaker, or are they an English language learner? This all has to do with how well and how large of a base we have for background knowledge in our students. So you can see here, too, that students who are born in or near poverty, 63% of them are failing. Whereas those not born in or near poverty, it's only 37%. It's a big difference. So schema then. I like to think of schema as the boxes in your brain containing the information you need on each topic. So for example, the box in my brain on crafting, baking, crocheting, that's very large because I nourish that part of my mind a lot. I learn and engage myself in self-directed studies on that topic because it's high interest to me and I find it valuable learning. However, my schema for football is in comparison much smaller. It's growing steadily because my husband is helping me every fall learn more about the teams. And this last fall, I actually had my own fantasy football league, so I learned and was motivated through that opportunity to build my knowledge and my background understanding of football and its intricacies, how players and teams work, and how championships are determined. So schema is like if your brain's a big box factory. There's boxes of all different sizes and shapes, depending on the topic, your depth of knowledge, and what you know about that and have retained long term. So think about it as in relationship to vocabulary. Deep vocabulary meaning is built through a growing bank of knowledge that is continually reorganized and expanded. So my schema about football was inaccurate in some ways. I thought, points were scored only through certain ways, but I learned about punting and how you can kick field goals. It's not just about touchdowns. So when I did that, I had to reorganize and expand my understanding in relationship to that idea. So context and content matter. So if a student look at ideas, do they only get big ideas? Do they have specific associations with those ideas? Do they have some particular people and places they can identify with those ideas? The key developments that have happened over time in that area of study, as well as word and vocabulary sorts. Are they exposed to ways that to really meaningfully interact with what is or is not like this content? Are they given timelines and chronology to help them wrap their minds around how does this work in sequence? This topic, it could be a social studies topic, a science topic, it could be about math. Are there any extraordinary events that could really pique their interest and make the learning more memorable? So you really want to contextualize and conceptualize content area knowledge for our students. We want them to be able to interact with it on all of these levels. The more associations we build in our brain in regards to these ideas, the more likely we are to remember them. So first stage of vocabulary development as posed by, I don't remember who at this point. It might have been B. Miller and Boop, but I'm not sure. But in stage 1, you can find the link here. Students have never seen the word before. Stage 2, I've heard that word, but I don't really know what it means. Or stage 3, I recognize this in context. I know it has something to do with blah, blah, blah. Stage 4 is when I know it well. I don't need the context to understand it because I have assimilated that into my schema and it's just naturally a part of my working vocabulary now. So you can see here, these are the vocabulary ranges of students. In first grade, students can have anywhere from 5,500 words in their vocabulary to 32,000 words in their vocabulary. Quite a disparity there, about 25,000, almost 30, between 25 and 30,000 is the disparity there of words that a student is exposed to and can use in their working vocabulary. By 12th grade, that gap has increased to nearly 45,000 words. When you see students from a low socioeconomic background, their vocabulary base is about 28,200 words, whereas a student from a more affluent background, 73,200 words. That's huge. So what does research say? It says that we can help our students by taking time to directly teach a word. When we're directly teaching a word, we don't just say, this is the word and this is what it means. We need to make it meaningful. We have to show this word to the student through multiple exposures and repetition that is fun and engaging and different each time. Perhaps you pair visuals with the word. Perhaps you have the students act out what the word means. They need to be interacting with the word in many different contexts. They can't just know the definition of the word. That's useless. And they should also be able to find the word around them through incidental learning. And you sometimes, a lot of times as the teacher, have to be the one to point those intentional moments out. I just heard the word, we were listening to this speech, and I just heard one of our words from last week's vocabulary study in our social study unit. Did anyone catch what that word was? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? That would be an example of a prime incidental learning opportunity. Also using technology tools, teaching students how, okay, I kind of know this word, maybe they're back in stage 3, I kind of know it, but not quite. So how can I access a dictionary and find the correct definition that matches my context? So frequently expose students to targeted vocabulary words through explicit instruction, as well as times of questioning and just engaging those words in your natural language. Some teachers even tell students, if I catch you using one of these words, your name goes in for a drawing for a prize at the end of the week. How motivating is that? So teachers, there are many things you can do. One thing is a linear array. This is a specific type of graphic organizer that's used for depicting gradations between two related words. For example, if I want to teach students about freezing versus boiling, I might help them gradiate from freezing, it becomes cool, then it's tepid or lukewarm, hot, and then boiling. Private versus colonel. This can help me with ranking order. Private, sergeant, captain, lieutenant, colonel. How about in relationship to time? This is specifically helpful to English language learners. Past to future, there's all kinds of words in between, like yesterday, present, and tomorrow. So linear arrays are helpful. Now, I want you to pause this video and try this. Choose one of these words or concepts and create a linear array to bring with you to our next session. Okay, another way that teachers have motivated their students is to give them a textbook scavenger hunt. They tell them, students, I want you to choose 5 words or terms that your group thinks will be very important to this unit, just previewing the headings in our text. Now choose one picture in this chapter and tell me why your group thinks that this picture is important. So you see, you're not just teaching vocabulary strategies through these scavenger hunts, you are teaching your students valuable means of interacting with informational text, something we know many students in America are woefully deficient in. So then have the students, next step, choose one graph or map and provide a different caption for it. Give a summary of the cycle on page blah, blah, blah. And you can just go through each of those. Those are fantastic ways to get students working with the words in context and looking for them. Howard Gardner, he taught us a lot about multiple intelligences and how they help students interact with words in various ways. He came up with the multiple intelligence theory in 1983 and has since adapted it and added to it. He talks about that there are learners who are most gifted in musical, rhythmic, and harmonic types of learning. There are those who are visual, spatial, verbal, logical, mathematical, bodily, kinesthetic, that means they need to move. Some people like to be interpersonal. They like to get to know others. And then there's intrapersonal. I want to be introspective. I want to think about what's going on inside and have time to reflect. And then there are those who are naturalistic in nature. They think about things in terms of the environment. They think of things in terms of being able to be outside and actually experiencing the science that they're learning. So he really helped us discover different modalities for our instruction that can be helpful to our learners. Stay tuned for part 2 of this fantastic information.